All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're cracking open a really important position paper from the Ateneo School of Government. And believe me, it raises some absolutely explosive questions about the Philippines' 2025 national budget. So, we're going to do exactly what they did. We're going to follow the money and see where this trail leads.
You know, this is not your typical dry academic paper. The language they use is just wow. Words like appalled, horrified, stunned. They just leap right off the page. It really makes you stop and ask, what on earth did they find in the national budget to use words this strong? Well, let's dig in and find out.
The paper's very first charge is like a gut punch. They call it a perverse level of greed. We're not just talking about some sloppy accounting here. No, this is a straight-up accusation of serious corruption right at the highest levels. So, where does an investigation like this even begin? Let's follow that first thread.
And let's be really clear here. The Ateneo School of Government, or ASOG, isn't just throwing around opinions. They're arguing that there's a systematic crisis, a deliberate erosion of our institutions, and guess what? They brought the receipts. They've laid out a whole paper trail of data, and we're going to follow that trail number by number to see the picture that they're painting.
Okay, so our first stop on this money trail is what some are calling the floodgate scandal. And this is where the numbers start to get, well, truly mind-boggling. ASOG's investigation suggests that the budget for flood control, a supercritical issue for the country, might have been turned into a pipeline for something else entirely.
Just look at this number for a second. 496.3 billion pesos. According to ASOG's deep dive into the budget, which includes all sorts of insertions, this is the potential grand total for flood control projects in 2025. I mean, to put that into perspective, that's nearly 500 billion pesos. A number this huge, it practically screams for a closer look. And this chart right here, it just puts everything into stark relief. The base budget for just the flood management program is bigger than the entire proposed budgets for the Department of Health and the Department of Social Welfare. It forces you to ask a really fundamental question: are our nation's priorities straight? So, the big question is, where did all this cash for projects like flood control even come from? This is where the investigation gets really specific. You see, the ASOG paper doesn't just point to big budgets. It shows a clear pattern of funds being moved around, taken from some really key agencies and then funneled into others. All right, let's call this Exhibit A. Just look at these cuts to crucial agencies. We're talking 23 billion gone from the National Irrigation Authority, 22 billion from the Department of Agriculture, 18 billion from the Department of Labor. These are the agencies that are supposed to ensure our food security, our jobs, our national development. So where did all that money go? And now, Exhibit B. An absolutely staggering 94.3 billion pesos was rerouted into the Department of Public Works and Highways. Yep, the same agency handling those massive flood control projects. ASOG analysis suggests a pretty clear pattern here: a deliberate move away from strategic investments and a move towards agencies that are, as they put it, prone to graft and patronage politics. And this brings us to the human cost of all these budget shuffles. According to the ASOG paper, this isn't just about moving numbers around on a spreadsheet. It's about a fundamental change in how the government is choosing to fight poverty. Basically, shifting away from proven, effective programs toward a system that seems to prioritize political favors. ASOG draws a really sharp line in the sand between two different approaches. On one side, you have rules-based programs like the 4Ps. They use a clear system to figure out who gets help, which makes social service feel like a right. But on the other side, you've got these padrino-based programs, basically cash dole-outs, where politicians have a lot more say in who gets the money. And that, ASOG argues, creates a culture of personal debt to that politician, not real empowerment. And the numbers, well, they tell a pretty clear story. The proven, rules-based 4Ps program, its budget got slashed by 50 billion pesos. Meanwhile, the funding for those discretionary, padrino-based dole-outs, it ballooned to 130 billion pesos. It's kind of hard to misread where the financial priorities are. But hey, do these rules-based programs actually work any better? Well, a report from the Partnership for Transparency Fund gives us a perfect, real-world example. They looked at a civil society watchdog for the 4Ps program. Get this, their monitoring stopped a potential leak of 4.2 million pesos, helped get 1,500 times deserving families into the program, and even sped up payments. This is the exact kind of accountability and effectiveness that ASOG is arguing we're losing. Okay, so if the money isn't going to establish social programs or key development agencies,
The next logical question in this whole investigation has to be, who is benefiting from these massive budgets? Well, the paper follows that trail all the way to the very top.
The scale of these budget increases is just staggering. I mean, look at this. Between 2016 and 2025, the budget for the Office of the President jumped up by 461%. The House of Representatives and the Senate saw their budgets swell by 280 and 275%. These are just massive, exponential increases that raise some really serious questions about how our tax money is being spent.
And to make it even more real, ASOG broke the numbers down. In 2025, the cost to taxpayers to sustain just one single senator is over 1.5 million pesos every single day. And for a member of the House of Representatives, it's over 290,000 pesos per day. When you see it broken down like that, it really drives home the enormous amount of public money that's being allocated just to run these political offices.
So, after laying out all this evidence, piece by piece, the ASOG paper, along with other civil society and religious groups, they don't just stop there. They don't just point out the problems. They issue a verdict and a very clear, unified call to action.
Their demands are incredibly direct. Both ASOG and the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines are calling for a full, independent investigation that goes right to the top. They're demanding the public release of all budget documents and are warning against any kind of cover-up or whitewash. It's just this powerful, unified call for nothing less than total transparency and accountability.
You know, it's really important to understand that what we're talking about here isn't just some one-off incident. Research shows a long and, frankly, troubling history of similar scandals in the Philippines. This is a systemic issue, a persistent problem that has held the country back for decades, no matter who's been in charge. And that leaves us with this final, powerful question, which is adapted right from the conclusion of the ASOG paper. They say that public trust is broken. The question they leave us all to think about is, when the very foundation of how we're governed is cracked, who is responsible for putting all those pieces back together? It's a question not just for our leaders, but really for every single one of us.